Last time on Garage Insider TV, Lou got into a bit of a jam on the Slowburban, and we're not talking about the type that you put on your buttered toast. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to Garage Insider TV with Lou Santiago. Lou, take it away.
So I know you guys remember the last episode. It was a cluster. That's what it was. It was a total cluster, and I'm sure you can figure out what I mean. I put the heads on, didn't think about the lifters. They didn't fit in the boards because the lifters are too tall. So I had to take everything back apart, put everything back in, lifters first, torque everything down, new gaskets, new everything. So that's where we are. So now I'm going to show you guys how to measure for push rod lengths. And there's an explanation and some really cool fruits-approved art. Okay, so this is our valve train. As you can see, this is our push rod. This is our rocker arm. This is the rocker arm stud. This is the spring. This is the retainer. This is the valve stem. And this is the roller tip. So what you're trying to achieve here, or what you need to achieve here, I should say, is this rocker arm is going to pivot like this as it goes along when the engine's running. You need to have that roller tip right in the middle, as close to the middle as possible. The closer the better. Because what happens is, if your geometry is not right, if your push rod's too long or too short, what will happen is the tip will roll and it'll go off, or it will come back and go off. And then you have a bigger problem, because what's happening is when it comes back around, it's going to jam into the valve stem, hop up, you're going to bend the stud. You can create a myriad of problems. That's the whole reason for measuring out your push rods, because you need to have it run right in here. All right, so when you look at these rocker arms, this is a factory rocker arm. And as you can see, it's just one chunk of stamped steel. This is probably 3 hits and it's done. This is the ball that centers it on the stud. It goes in there. And then you have this nut that's crimped over, a lock nut, and that's what goes onto the stud, and that nut actually holds it in place. But I can tell you from past experience, if this nut gets on and off too much, it doesn't hold anymore. So what we're doing is we're going to go to a roller tip. The roller tip setup is actually really good, and they've become in favor for a lot of applications. One, because you have this roller tip, and it creates less friction because of the roller tip. And then you have this shaft that's on bearings. So this thing actually gives you horsepower that you would lose with the stamp setup. And instead of a locking nut, you have what's called a poly lock. What the poly lock does is it screws onto the stud. And then this plug goes in after you get it adjusted, and you just tighten it down, and it locks everything in place. So what happened was, you can buy these adjustable push rods. It's not a problem. Comp Cam sells them. I've got one right here. I've got another one in the engine. What I didn't realize, and I didn't want to, it's not that I didn't realize it, I wasn't expecting it. So that's what I'm going to call it. It's easier for me to say I wasn't expecting it. I put it in, it's still too long. I had it adjusted all the way in, and it was still too long. Now, normally that wouldn't be a problem, because you'll see here in a second, they give you plenty of adjustment. If you take this out, you could cut the push rod. It's going to take longer than it's taking. See, you got plenty of adjustment. I could have cut like an inch off of this and it wouldn't have affected it. But here's the problem I have. This isn't mine. I borrowed them from my neighbor, not test fitting anything, because I've used these before and I've never run into this problem. I'm running into a lot of things for the first time in this engine. It's really kicking my ass. So what I did was I took this one, ran up to my neighbor Scott, and we made one. Got some case hardened steel, tapped it out on the lathe, shaved it down a little bit on his belt sander, tapped it, but it doesn't have as much adjustment. So when I came here to work today, I put these in, and they're too long. So I just decided, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to destroy these and risk having to come up with something else. I just took a stock push rod, cut it, TIG welded a little nut on the top, nothing crazy, just a couple of tacks, and made my own adjustable push rod. So the next thing you're going to see is this going in the engine and me showing you what to do. So let's go.
Wish your pickup rode better when it was empty and didn't squat when you're hauling? Here's the perfect solution. A complete heavy-duty air suspension system from strutmasters.com. It comes with everything you need and bolts right in your truck with no modification. Raise and lower the back end for easy trailer hookup, and it rides like a dream. Get a complete air suspension kit for your truck at strutmasters.com or call us at 866-597-2397.
All right, so let's get this thing dialed in here and see what we got. All right, so I'm going to go through some of the parts on this thing. There's not many. There's the rocker arm studs, which we talked about, but these heads use guide plates. Factory heads typically don't use them, but on aftermarket heads, the holes that the push rod runs through to get to the lifter, they make it a bigger hole, because on high horsepower applications, guys do run fatter push rods. So this is the guide plate, and this is designed to keep the push rod in place because the hole is so sloppy. Sloppy hole. So we're going to take our push rod, put it down in there, put it on a lifter. We'll actually do this one. You're probably wondering why I'm doing it this way. I just happen to know from test fitting it that I got to be really careful about how I do. Oh wait, I can't do it this way. It's got to be upside down. This one's going to be upside down because it doesn't fit, because where the nut is in relation to these nuts on this other side, they're too low and they hit the guide plate. So I'm going to have to do it this way. Being that it clears the hole in the head, it won't be a problem. I can still adjust it and I can get it taken care of. So we put the rocker arm studs in, and these are screw-in studs. They also have, factory applications will have just pressed-in studs, which you could actually have the bosses drilled and pinned. But that's old school technology. Now in the rocker, something I didn't tell you about, see how it's got that little step in there? That is so the poly lock fits on top and you can tighten it. If you do it on the other side, you don't have enough flat surface, enough flat area to make the poly lock work. So you got to make sure you have that piece up. And you just drop it on, screw the poly lock down. I keep having trouble saying poly lock, rah, rah, rah. All right, here's this one, this one. Put this on here. Now, what I'm looking to do, the goal, like I said earlier, is to get the roller tip to roll in the middle of the valve stem. So I'm going to look at it, get a little light on the subject here. So the tip is too far down. So what I'm going to need to do is shorten the rod, and that'll make the rocker arm actually tilt up, and I'll have adjustment where I can get it in the middle. So that's what I'm going to do now. So my hands are going to get in the way because, you know, they just are. And I'll turn this. Snug it back up. See how loose it got just from making that adjustment. Now we'll check it again. I like go a little bit more. It's really close. There you go. I might go a little bit more. One more shot, I think. Let me grab my cheaters. Had to put on my old man eyes. All right. So, oh yeah. That is right about spot on. I'm going to give it one more turn, I think, and it'll be fine. Oh, yeah. That's me. Yeah. That's me. Okay. Okay, so that was my mock-up. So now the next step I'm going to do is tighten everything up, get the jam nut tight on there, get it all done, and then I'll take this side out. And the reason why I'm going to take this side out is because I'm going to bar the engine over to make sure that it travels where I want it to travel. Now this is where it becomes really important, because this is where the details come into play. You want to have everything on there. I was always taught you torque everything down where it needs to be. Now some guys will tell you, nah, you don't really need to do that, yada, yada, yada. Well, here's my philosophy on it, and the guy who told me that it made sense. If the rocker arm studs aren't tight, if the poly locks aren't tight, if the stuff isn't tight, you're going to get a false reading. It's kind of like the Wu-Tang beer virus. You'll get a negative positive or a positive negative. It's not going to be right. It doesn't matter. So make it the way it's going to live at the end of the day, and then bar it over and let it run through its travel, and you can watch it, and then you know exactly what the length is you need, and you know if your length is right. That's where it's important, because you don't want to spend all this time and effort putting everything together, buying all these new parts, and then destroying them as soon as you fire it up when you've got 2 miles on it. It doesn't make sense to do that. I'm not independently wealthy, and I doubt you are too. So I'm going to start locking everything down. Wrench. Here's my wrench. That's good enough for that. This can come out. I'll get another. Oh, 7/16, not ½ inch. Grabbed the wrong size. What was I thinking? All right, so now I'll take out this one and I'll tighten up the guide plate. We're going to take it off first. Because the nut won't clear the guide plate. I got to take the guide plate off first. All right? Oh, no, you know what? I won't need to take it off. I'll tighten it up the way it is because that's already tight. The jam nut's tight, so I can just put it back together and run it through its paces just to make sure. I don't need to take that off. It's already tight enough. So I'll tighten that. Get a socket. Socket. 11/16. Come on, you. All right, now, crank socket. I told you about this before. It's got the little slot for the woodruff pin, woodruff key. Slides over the snout, and you can bar it over. Now, see how it's coming up? See the lift is coming up? What I like to do now is it's up. I like to check it at its travel to see where it is on the valve. Now, it's going to move. Don't get me wrong. It's going to move. But it's not far off from the center. It's not going to come off. I could probably pull a little bit more out of it, but it looks really good. It's back down, and it's back in the center. There you go. All right, little words of advice for you. I know I'm only doing one at a time. That's because I only have one made. Realistically, what I like to do is do both sides, the intake and exhaust, because you can buy a camshaft where you have more intake lift than exhaust lift. And it makes a difference because you would order two different lengths of push rod. So keep that in mind. I'm going to measure this one, then I'll do the same thing on the exhaust side just to make sure that it's not a different height, and we'll be good to go. So that's it. The next thing you're going to see, the next episode I should say, the next thing is we're going to show you guys how to measure for wheels with the brakes on the Chevelle frame. So let's go check that out. Okay, so I've got this Dynasty 280, and I'm going to tell you guys, I'm really impressed with it. And I don't even know how to use half the stuff on it. It's so crazy. It has, you know, your AC/DC. It has your high freak. It has your slope time. It has, you know, one step, two step. It has everything. It has all this wild stuff. But this to me is the craziest thing. I've got an old machine at my house that I weld with, and I don't have the capabilities that this machine has because my machine is just too old. But what I find that's really cool about this is you can change the hertz. You got to remember everything is 60 hertz. This one, if you want to run on 20 hertz, you can dial it down. And I don't fully understand what all of it does, but I'm going to keep playing with it. But I can tell you this, Lee, Monday Morning Racer, he was a welding instructor. And one of these days, real soon, I'm going to hold the camera and let him explain more about it than I know. But from what he was telling me, and I know you guys have seen these videos where you've got metal dust and they make it dance, like they've got magnets and it's standing up and moving around and all like that. Picture that while you're welding. You're changing how the metal reacts when you're welding by changing the hertz. It's pretty crazy stuff and I'm new to it, but I feel that it's important to tell you guys that all of these analog machines, these transformer machines are going to be going away. They're going to stop making them. And these machines is what's replacing them. Now, I'm not saying they're going to come knocking on your door and they say, hey, we want your welding machine. That's not going to happen. They're only going to try that with your ARs, but not with your welding machines. But we need to keep in mind, in time, that welding machine that you have, like that synchro wave, like that square wave, they're going to go away because you won't have parts to fix them. So my suggestion to you is start looking at these newer machines if you haven't already, and start learning more about them because there's a ton of stuff on here. It's when you get the instruction booklet on, it's just in every language you could think of, but they're all novels. So you need to get savvy with it because that's what I'm going to do because it's only going to improve how you weld. So remember, Miller, it's Dynasty 280. Dynasty 280. I was going to say synchro wave because I'm so used to that. All right, let's play with this thing. All right, so I just want to give you guys a little teaser on what we're doing next on the Chevelle. I'm going to show you guys how to measure up for your wheels. Now, here's the thing. Keep this in mind. This is the hat area. Not all hats are created equally. Same with the brakes. You have overhang that goes to the outside, which is important for your wheels because you need to make sure you have enough clearance so the wheels don't hit the caliper. That's where these pieces come into play. Not only that, you need those measurements because there's clearly a difference here that you're going to learn about because this does stick out a little bit more past the hat. You need to know about that. So when I call Budnick, who's going to generously supply me with wheels, and they're awesome, going to get my wheels from Budnick, I need to be able to give them these specific measurements. So that's what you're going to see on the next episode with the Chevelle. So you better get caught up on the Chevelle episodes because it's going to be a test. Hey guys, I almost forgot to show you the measurement. So I don't want you guys to run off and not know that I did not know. This is how I'm going to do it. Now I know a few guys that actually have calipers and do this because it's pretty critical. But what I'm going to do is cheat. I'm going to use my little straight edge here, my speed square. And I'm going to call that 7 and 1/32. Yep, 7 and 1/32. Now, the reason why this is critical is because the height does change the difference. You saw how it makes a big difference on it. So that's it for now. See you guys next time when I'm doing the Chevelle.